There we go. You should all have a message saying that it's recording. Yeah, everyone's good with that? Awesome. All right, well, thanks for everyone for attending. And this is the second code along session. The first session was posted on the week 1 page. We're going to post this on the week 2 page. Although, quite frankly, if you're watching this already, you've probably found it. So I don't even know why why I really said that. So the first announcement I just want to make is thanks for everyone's patience with the homework 0. I know what the issue is. The issue is just that if I created the repository before you'd clicked accept on my invite, I assumed it would automatically appear in your thing. It did not. That affected some students. Hopefully it didn't affect most. I don't think it affected most based on the people asking me, but it did affect some. So sorry about that. Obviously, moving forward, week homework 01 is not going to be an issue because I already have you accepting the organization invite. So it's just a temporary issue. This is why we don't mark homework 00. This is why I'm not going to shut it off at the deadline, which is later today. It's just so we can kind of iron out any issues and everyone gets a practice. So it is just a practice. Sorry, it's been a little tricky, but you know, we do have students joining even this week. Yeah, so you know, this process is ongoing. The other thing is that I am going to get your team sorted today. There will be emails coming out to some of you, particularly students who have written their team multiple times with multiple people. And if those change, then I get a bit confused because I don't know who's in what group. So if your team has changed, or if your teammates have all done the same form but written different things, then I'm going to have to contact you and I'll email you later. Effie, has a lot of people had issue with their homework 0? I would say, I'm guessing that it would be we have about 350 students. So far, I've fixed about 40 repositories, maybe. So it shouldn't be most, but it will be some. And as I say, the issue is that once I sent the invite out, I just assumed that it would work once I got that, but I should have probably made another check to make sure you'd actually accepted it before I created the homework 0 repository. Won't happen again because hopefully you've all accepted the invites to the repository, where I think we've got we're around 300 people accepting that. So that's nearly most of the class. And that brings me on to my final point. As you can probably tell, this is a very popular course. There's even still a waiting list. And so if you do want to drop out, your place will be filled by someone else. We hope that you want to stay. We hope that you're enjoying it. But because of that, that does also mean that it is sometimes hard for us to know if you're struggling. So this is the reason why we have these student hours, why we have Piazza, why we ask you to email us, why you can ask questions in the workshops and stuff. We really want you to let us know when you're having problems. It's so much easier than us being able to try find where those issues are. So for example, with the homework 0, if you emailed me, hopefully you found that I got it sorted pretty quick once I knew what the problem was. Again, with any other issues in the future, or even in general with the course, any problems that you're having, please let us know so we can help you. It's really, really hard to know when people are struggling, especially as class sizes get a bit larger. So speak up and we will help you, we promise. So please do that. Alex, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, just so my quick thing was I've had quite a few emails which are to do with like the homework 0 issue and issues like that. And I am significantly less good at dealing with GitHub and any of this stuff than David, and I have no idea how he's doing any of that. So essentially when I get those emails, I have to just forward them to David. So the reason I'm saying this is I don't mind getting them. It's no problem to me. It just takes longer for it to actually get resolved because there's an extra step of somebody noticing the email and forwarding it. If you're ever unsure which person to send the email to, so generally I'm dealing with course content questions and David is dealing with sort of admin questions as a sort of general breakdown. If you're ever unsure, it's totally fine to just email both of us. Because one of us will reply. So don't feel like you're spamming us if you email both of us. It'll just be whoever gets to it first. And that's, whoever gets to it first of the people that can answer it. So feel free to email both of us if that's ever a thing. Yeah, I think that was the only thing I was going to say.
And just a reminder as well, Your question will nearly always, unless it's something that I have to do, like admin wise, will always get answered quicker on Piazza, because there's other students there, and a lot of the times other students will have already figured out the problem. And me and Alex typically work what, 9-5? Do you work around that, like 10-6?
9:30, 5:30 usually, but
Yeah. And
roughly
so
that.
you guys probably aren't as constrained like that. Maybe you work later, maybe you work earlier. The good thing about
I don't
Piazza
know
is
if
that it's generally
that's
being
me
covered.
or if
Oh dear, we've lost Alex again. F in chat for Alex's internet connection. So yeah, the point being is that Piazza will generally be a bit quicker. Oh, is David breaking up? No, it's you, Alex.
oh good. Why are there loads of F's in the chat now?
It's for you. It's for you, Alex. You left. We couldn't see you.
Why is this happening again? Right.
All right. Alex, my G, exactly. We pray for his internet. The service provider that we will not name, as we did last week, because Alex doesn't want me to name them, they're screwing him over. But yeah, okay. While we'll do what we did last time, because Alex has prepped this session. Any questions, any issues that people are having, more than happy to answer them. They can be about course content too. Just generally Alex handles those questions. And I handle the more administrative side. Please put them in the chat. Please speak up, put your camera on, put your mic on if you can. Makes it easier. But yeah, any questions while we wait for Alex's internet? It is gigplot, so ggplot's just a function that we can use. So ggplot, to start with, it creates like a base layer for your plots. So it is, in a way, you can think of it as a function. And what it's doing is it creates like a base layer that you can then build up upon. Alex, you seem to be back.
I'm back. I'm back.
Go on.
I'll just explain. This isn't the same problem as last time. I was following the university's advice that when you connect to Zoom, you should do it through the VPN. And it turns out that the VPN just dropped out, and that was why I lost connection. So I'm now just ignoring that advice.
I don't use that advice either. It might be easier for students if you sign through the VPN, especially if you are not at Edinburgh. It might be easier for you guys, but I think, well, me and Alex, we both live in Edinburgh, and so it's not a problem. It's more of a problem, I think, if you're an international student and you're not currently in the country. I'll just answer a few more questions, and then Alex, we can get going. To submit a homework assignment, do we just need to commit and push? Yeah. So because the homework assignments are individual, meaning that you're not working in a team, the requirement to pull, as you've probably figured out, is, well, you don't really need to, unless you've made changes on another computer, which you want to transfer between computers. You won't really need to pull. So, and even then, you're using RStudio Cloud. So it's, you know, as long as you log into that RStudio Cloud, it's not a problem. So commit and push. And in the homeworks, you'll see that there's stages where we recommend you to do it, because we want you to get into the habit of committing and pushing often. It's the same thing for the labs. We want you to get into the practice of committing, pulling, and pushing often. And that's just because you're less likely to have any errors when you're working in a team-based environment if you're doing it regularly. Once you've pushed it, double check that it is on GitHub, that it looks like you think it's going to look on the GitHub. You can always check the MD file that renders in GitHub nicely, because that's what we use to mark. Again, homework 0, only a practice. So, you know, if you're having any issues, probably this is a question for Piazza, because I think a lot of people are interested in this at the moment. I've got 1 or 2 emails myself about it. Just put in the Piazza and say, hey, I'm confused about the situation of submitting homework. How do I do it? And we can always help you in there as well. Yeah. Okay.
I'll take the question about piping. I'll just take as we're going along, because I'm going to be using that today. So I'll explain more about what those do.
Right. I'll just take 1 or 2 last questions, and then Alex, I don't want to fill the session up, because obviously we've got a lot to get on. Changing workshop slots. So the best thing to do is email me. So I'm going to send out some emails later today, and I'm going to send out an announcement that if things have changed between you submitting the team form and now, I need to know about it and I will manually change it. So the form is locked for a reason. And that's because if I leave it open, there'll be lots and lots of changes. And sometimes I don't know which the right change is. I could just assume it's the last one, but then, it causes all sorts of issues. So I lock it deliberately. If you have anything that you need to adjust, you need to email me, and I'll put that in an announcement to everyone, just as I get that sorted today. If there's a problem and on the day you turn up to the workshop tomorrow and there's a problem, again, we can resolve it. It's not going to be an issue. So it should be fine. So coding exercises in the repository. Alex, you're probably going to show how they can create the repository for this code along session, aren't you?
That's right. Yeah. I'll show it sort of. There's some bits I can't show because of I'll end up showing basically every student's because of the way because I'm an instructor on the course. My RStudio Cloud shows every student's repository, and I don't want to show that on the recording. But I can show you most of the steps. I can certainly show you where the repository is.
What functions are we supposed to memorize? I would say that memorizing functions is not really the key. We don't have an exam for a reason. This is about working on projects. You should learn how to use them and you should learn what they should do. But most people who code use Google and Stack Overflow quite a lot, and they use cheat sheets a lot. So even me and Alex, we probably won't remember absolutely every single function we've ever used because there's a lot. So the best thing that you can learn on this course is to know where to find information on functions or how to do things. That's a skill in itself. So you don't need to necessarily memorize them, but there are cheat sheets that are in the resources tab on the website, idsed.digital, which you may find useful. Again, people joining teams, send that to me via email. How much can we ask about homeworks? So projects are not done individually. They're going to be done in teams. The homeworks, what we don't want to happen, we will just make them private if you make this mistake, is that you post your answers on the Piazza forum. Like, for example, I'm having this problem. And then you completely show most of your code, because homeworks are meant to be done individually. And also I'm going to make an announcement about this when we get towards homework 1. When I release homework 1, because that's the first one that actually will count. If you start working with other people, it's going to pop up that you are plagiarizing. And I don't want any of you to get in trouble for that. So please work on them by yourselves. And on Piazza, you can ask general questions like, I don't know, how do I filter? Using the tidyverse, right? That's a general question. That's not posting exactly your code. But what you can't do is post all your code and say, hey, it's an error, can someone fix it for me? Because that's, other people will then just kind of copy that code. And then now we're going to have plagiarism things popping up. So we don't want that. Again, you can read on the website what our course policy is for copying codes. That's all online. The gist of it is, if you get code from the internet, then that's great. Just cite where it comes from. If you don't know what any of those terms mean, read the policies for the course, and you won't get in trouble that way. You just can't copy work off of the students. So some of these other ones we'll probably get to in the actual code along session. Moving rooms, what team am I in? Email me. Alex is still having problems. Okay. Where do we cite? So I'm just going to post it in the chat. It's on policies, I think. Yeah, here we go. So there's a section in the policies. I'm posting that in the chat now. From collaboration policy and then sharing and reusing code. What you do is, hopefully by now you may have come across comments, or you may know what I mean by markdown. I would like you to put it in the markdown above the bit of code. That's the white bit of code before it turns into a code block. You either put, I used functions from X, or I used this code from Y, or you do it as a comment. So you do your hash and then you put in where you got that from. More than happy for you to use stuff online, but you do need to cite where you're getting things from. I don't want anyone getting caught out for plagiarism when they shouldn't be. Is there a natural progression of this course or something in semester 2? That sounds like a great question to ask on Piazza. Hopefully Alex has got is internet? Is your internet all
Yeah,
right?
I think so. I apologize if at any point the picture gets, so I'm now connected via 4G rather than through Wi-Fi. Hopefully that's more stable. I think our internet can't cope with two people in video calls at the same time, which I don't understand because it should be decent, but anyway. I apologize. I only seem to have an internet connection problems at 10 o'clock on a Thursday because I never have problems at any other time in the week and I can't test it. Yes, it is going to drain my 4G. Fortunately, I have quite a large data plan.
Awesome. Good. Right. I think any other questions that you posted in chat that we haven't got to, I do want to move on with the coding session. Please put them on Piazza. We will answer them there, or obviously ask them in the workshop tomorrow or at any of our student hours or anything like that. We do want to answer your questions, but I also do want to get on with the code along session. Obviously, during the code along session, there might be questions that you want to ask Alex, like, what does that pipe do? Or what is that library? Or what is that function? They're the sort of questions that we're going to answer as we go along. Yeah, hopefully you'll find it useful. So Alex, I'll let you take the floor.
I'm going to share my screen now. So I'm going to show you firstly the repository that we're going to be using. So one thing I'll just quickly say, I can see the chat once I start sharing screen, but I can't see anyone's faces after that. So just a quick disclaimer, but let me share my screen now. So screen 2. There we go. So hopefully you can now see, there we go. Hopefully you can see that.
It might just be a bit blurry as it loads in.
Yeah.
Remember, we've got a lot of people on the call. So if it's blurry for the next minute, don't worry, it will eventually crisp up and become HD again.
So this is markdown file for the code along. So we're going to expand this as we go along. And the data we're going to look at are another Tidy Tuesday data set. So as I said last week, this is this weekly project of sort of data visualization in the R education community. And I've not used this week's this time. I'm saving that for later because it works well with some of the stuff we're going to be doing later in the course. So I've used one from a couple of weeks ago, which was week 38 of 2021. And it was the data from the Billboard Hot 100. So that is the main American music chart. So it covers singles, individual songs, and it goes back to 1958. And the data we've got all the way to 2021 in May. So it's not going to be right up to date, but it's going relatively close to now. So if you want to sort of code along with this, the repository is public and it's on the course space, so you can click on code and this copy button here. So if you click that copy button here, you will be able to then, and I'm not going to show you the actual process for the reason I said earlier. Instead, what you can do is, if we go into the setup and troubleshooting, you can this one. You can go into new project from repository on RStudio Cloud and paste that URL in there. So instead of this thing, you paste in the URL of the project. And then there's some stuff on this page about personal access tokens. Hopefully you've got used to that a bit from the lab now, but I know some people on the Piazza are still having trouble with personal access tokens. Yeah, just you might want to look down this while we're going along. It's going to be a relatively gentle introduction, so I'm not going to do too much coding for the first couple of minutes. So
can I just jump in there, Alex? Yes. Alex, sorry for interrupting. I know you can't see us, right. So I will occasionally just butt in. I'm sorry. It's just a note that for the code along sessions, you won't be able to push anyway, because we don't want you to make changes to the general one. So if you do push and you get an error, that's deliberate. It's so you don't overwrite the main one, and then when someone else tries to do it, then it's all changed because of any changes. So don't worry, you can't mess with the original version. Play around with it in your local RStudio Cloud project. But if you do try push it back, we've kind of stopped you from being able to do that. So you can't overwrite the original template anyway.
So I'm going to actually show you, there's some R Markdown stuff here. I'm going to show you what that generates on GitHub, because it generates a kind of GitHub markdown that can be displayed on GitHub. So the original data set, I've very lightly cleaned it, and so I'm not reading it directly from the web. And the reason I'm not reading it directly from the web is that there's a weak ID, which R treats as text on the web version, and I saved the version where I'm treating it as a date. We will talk through later on in the course how you convert between data types. So, you could have this string of characters here, 1958, 08, 02, R could treat that as just literally that text, or it could treat it as the 2nd of August, 1958. And we're going to talk through later in the course how you convert between them, but just to skip over that for now, I've done that. And so the main data, it's a really, really long data frame. So if we have a look at, I haven't loaded it yet. So if I load the necessary packages and load the data, and then we have a look at it, you'll see as it's huge, 307,895 entries in these 11 columns. And it has this song, Don't Just Stand There by Patty Duke, is appearing time and time again. And the reason is that it went on the charts on the 17th of July, 1965. These are American dates. And it stayed on the charts for a while, and it has a separate entry for each week that this song was on the charts. So that's an awful lot of data, and really what we're going to want to do is analyze songs. So what I've done is created a new data frame from that just has some key sort of summary data about each song. So the code that does that, I've provided for you in this cleanup.r, but again, you're not going to understand necessarily what this does unless you've read ahead of the course or done R before or anything like that, because we're using all sorts of functions to do this that you've not seen yet. So what I've done is created a new data frame, and that new data frame is called, so there's a little summary first of what you can do with the main one. So let's do that again. Let's pick could someone suggest any song that might have been on the Billboard Hot 100 in the chat? Counting Stars, there we go, I'll take the first one. So that's by, who's Counting Stars by? I should know this. I'm not that old. Someone suggested Never Gonna Give You Up. Unfortunately, that's the example I already used. I was ahead of you on that one. One Republic, Counting Stars. I thought it was One Republic. I'm not that old yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I'm going to type some text. Let's try a different song, and I'm going to create a new code chunk. So remember, in these R Markdown documents, we have in these R Markdown documents, we have just ordinary text, which is our sort of analysis of what's going on, and we have our code chunks, which contain our code. So let's take our song data, and we're going to filter. So I'm hoping that there's only one song by Counting Stars. So what we're going to say, I don't think we've seen filter statements yet, but I'm just going to show you an example of one. What a filter does is it takes all of the songs that, a filter statement selects rows of the data frame that satisfy some condition. Why select message equals false? So I'm doing that, probably don't actually need that. I'm going to get rid of that for now. Message equals false tells it that if there are any messages, don't display them in the output. So anything like, this data frame has this many columns and so on. If you don't want that, you can put message equals false and it will tell it not to. There are other things like warning equals false and error equals false that toggle the same things that tell it not to display those. But actually, this is probably not going to do that, so we don't need it. So filter, we want song equals, use a double equals sign here for the condition, and song equals Counting Stars. So let's see if there's only one song with that name. I didn't load the, hang on, wrong data frame. So I want chart data. There we go. And yeah, it looks like
Alex, I think that was, so how did you know that you'd got the wrong data frame there? How did you know to change it?
So when I put in song data, it said error in filter dot song equals counting stars, object song data not found. That's because there is a data frame called song data. It's loaded by this line of code, but I haven't run that line of code yet. And song data, as you can see, does not appear in the environment. So the way I knew is I read the error message that says song data not found and thought, oh, okay, that's some data frame I haven't loaded yet. So
thank you, Alex. I'll occasionally chip in if I think that there's something that would be useful for you to explain.
So chart data, and this gives me another good opportunity just to explain what the pipe does. So I'm going to write a different line of code here, which is filter chart data song equals counting stars. Those two lines of code do exactly the same thing. The first line and the second line, exactly the same. All this pipe does is it takes chart data and plugs it in as the first entry of filter. You might ask, what's the point? The point is that if we were doing a long sequence of operations, which, just to give you an example of code that does that, in this file here, that's a really long sequence of operations. There's one pipe, two, three, that's three. It's not really long. There's a lot. And also some of these operations are very long themselves. So when you're doing a long sequence of things, nested code like this can get hard to keep track of. There are ways around it. You can do various things like creating dummy variables and so on, but the pipe is intended as a way of just making your code clear, making it clear that what you're doing is doing the first thing, then doing the next thing, then doing the next thing. All the pipe does sort of under the hood, the point of it is to make your code clear. What it's actually doing is just this relatively simple thing of taking chart data, taking the thing before the pipe, putting it as the first entry in the function after the pipe. So I'm going to use the pipe, so I want to maybe do something else with this. Because what I actually want to do is tell it to print everything. So I'm going to say print n equals, let's just say 1,000, because it probably wasn't on the chart for 1,000 weeks. There we go. So you can see that this song was on the chart for 68 different weeks. And it's held lots of different positions. And what we could do with that is we can plot it. So this is our first graph that we're going to do today. So I don't want to print it anymore. What I want to do is create a plot using this data. So ggplot. And let's say we want to plot its chart position. So we can say, so when we're doing a ggplot, the first thing we put in, so really the first entry is the data, but we're using a pipe. So that means the first entry is going to be this filter data. And the second thing is this AES. So AES stands for aesthetic. And it means sort of the aesthetics are how we map variables to visual features of the plot. So if you want to show chart position over time, we're going to want the x-axis probably to be the date. And I've called that column, what did I call that column? I called that column chart date. I could have worked that out. And the y is going to be the chart position. Okay. Except that didn't work. Why didn't that work? That didn't work because it's not chart position, it's week position. So you do always have to look at the actual names. You don't need to write mapping equals AES. That's correct. Normally you would write the bit before. It's good practice to write which argument you're using. The AES one is so common and always used as the second argument, or the first one if you're using a pipe. So it's always in that position, and it's so common that it's simpler just to not write the mapping equals, and that one is generally considered acceptable. Would you get a style guide? Yeah, there's a style guide going to be linked to you eventually. I don't know if David can find that and send it in the chat.
I think what we'll do for now is we won't worry about sending the style guide, but we give you one later on once we've taught you a few more bits of R. If you're really keen, you want to go find it. It's the R style guide that was written by Google a few years ago. But I don't have the link to hand, and we will be talking about it later in the course anyway. Yeah. So
do you write data before the AS? Yes, you do. But the thing is, again, this pipe here is effectively doing that. So what this is doing is taking the output of this, which is another data frame, and plugging it in here. So we could write this if we wanted to, and this would be like, I know we're not talking too much about style, but definitely don't do this. We could write this as, okay, here's some data and we're plugging it in as the first entry. But that looks really messy now, so you should use another piper. If we do that, that doesn't do anything, because all we've told it is we want a plot. We haven't said what type of plot. So it shows this these axes, which is lovely, but doesn't actually do anything. So what we need to do, this is annoying now, because ggplot was written before pipes were invented. So as soon as you use a ggplot statement, instead of using pipes, you need to use plus signs. They work in a very similar way. They're not quite doing this action of putting the thing in as the first entry. They're actually it's just a different thing under the hood, but they work in a similar way. I'm not going to go into exactly what the plus operator is doing here, because it is quite complicated and I don't fully know all the intricacies of it myself. But just know that when you get onto a ggplot, you start using plus instead of pipes. It's annoying.
Alex, can you show them what happens when they do use a pipe? Because everyone, including me, will eventually accidentally use a pipe.
Yeah, I've done it. I did it when carrying this code along. So let's say we want to put on, we're going to want a line plot. So John line, and it says, error, mapping must be created by AES. Did you use pipe instead of plus? So it's actually telling us in this case, we made a mistake. So what this first line, what that's actually saying is it's trying to put the ggplot object in as the first entry in John line. And John line doesn't understand that. You wouldn't put the first entry of because you use pluses instead of pipes, it doesn't accept this as the first entry in this thing. What it's expecting is maybe some more aesthetics, and we don't have any more aesthetics to give it, so it's getting confused. Fortunately, this is such a common mistake that it actually asks us if we meant to use a plus. So let's do that. So now you can see its chart position over time. Can anyone see a problem with this graph? Because I look at this graph and I think, oh, it did really well at first, and then it kind of dipped and then picked up again. Is that what's happening with the song? Is it getting suddenly popular? Yeah, it's inverted, because chart position, we would generally say that smaller numbers, so like if a song is top of the charts, it's the best song, or not best, but the best-selling song, or most streamed song, it would appear, at the top of the charts, but it would have a low number. That would be number one. So what we need to do for that is there's a function that actually does that, scale y reverse. And if we add that to the plot, it flips the y-axis. And that's what we're going to need for this. So for any sort of chart things, smaller numbers would want to be good. So we don't want to just put negative numbers, because you wouldn't, that would be one way around it, right? You could just say, change the weak position to a negative number, but that would look weird if you said, this song is number -5 on the charts. So we can just reverse the scale, but leave the labels the same. We could do a bit more, and in the example I've done there, I'll answer in a sec. In the earlier example, I've done a little bit more to customize this. So for instance, it's impossible for a song to be number 0, so I forced it to just show number 1 at the top. You can have a look at the code for that now. I want to get onto the stuff about specific songs. I've added some labels. Does the plus have the exact same function as pipes? Not exactly. What's happening, so as I say, I won't go into the details of what's going on sort of under the hood, as you might say. But the way ggplot deals with things is it really does consider sort of adding things together. So taking a plot object and adding things. And so it's not doing this thing of putting the first entry in. It just works in practice. When you're coding, you use a plus where you would use a pipe, but it isn't doing exactly the same thing. How do we know it's inverted? This is just convention. So it is conventional that songs that are like the top of the charts and considered good songs appear like at the top of graphs, but they have low numbers. That's just a conventional thing. So you might have that for like competitions if you were showing data for that. So, you know, if somebody won a competition, let's say you were graphing, I don't know, places in the Olympic 100 meter, let's say, whoever gets first place, whoever gets number one in their ranking is going to be the best athlete, and you would usually want to show that at the top of the chart. It's purely convention. There's no sort of underlying data reason why that's true. It's just that's what a viewer would expect to see. There's some really, and when we get to the data ethics week, there's a really interesting example of a chart for America to do with gun deaths, and the axes have been shown inverted, and no one's quite sure exactly why it was shown inverted, but the effect was it made it look like, you know, if you just glanced at the plot, that the effect of a particular change in policy was the opposite of what it actually was. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. What does the R1 Republic do? So that is a label. So this is doing two things. The R is telling it this chunk is R code. So theoretically, you might be able to use other things there for different kinds of code within a code chunk. So this is markdown syntax, this, not R code itself. The One Republic is just a label. So that's me saying this code chunk is called One Republic. So if you look up here, for instance, this code chunk is called You Up, and this code chunk is called Let You Down. They're just names. They're useful for referring to things. Is there a hierarchy to the added functions? Usually not, except that it's sort of a good practice kind of way to do it, which is to the good practice way to do it is to kind of start with the fundamental things of what kind of plot and then add more cosmetic things as you go along. In terms of how you code it, no, except that if you do things later, they will sort of replace, you know, if you, so if I ran a different scale Y thing, so if I ran like scale Y continuous and set limits on it, say, or whatever, that would overwrite my scale Y reverse. So later things overwrite earlier things where that's applicable. I don't know what other languages you can write chunks in on Markdown. That's a good question. I'll try and find out.
I think you can do Python code.
Python code.
I think. Obviously, in this course,
we're not going to. Yeah. I don't know Python very much. So the way you start a code chunk is 3 backticks, and then open curly brackets R, and then the label. You don't actually have to type that. What you can do is click this plus chunk button, and oh, there we go. Yeah, you can add SQL. You can add Bash. Lots of other languages that I've never heard of. If you click R, though, it adds an R chunk for you, so you have to type the name in, and then any options after a comma. But it gives you the basic syntax of the chunk. Is there a way to change the scale of the axes as well, apart from reversing? Yes, there is. We're probably not going to use it today, but there are definitely ways to do that. But what I want to do is get on to the next bit, which is actually talking about the songs. So I'm going to clean this up afterwards. But let's read our other data frame in song data. So this is the anyone watched Blue Peter? This is the here's one I made earlier, and oh, I forgot to change this. So I've merged 2 data frames here, and we've got this weird song X and performer X. Let me just fix that. So what that means is that I've tried to merge 2 data frames, but I've also got a song Y, and that's because I forgot to do it properly. So I will just fix this. So by song ID, song and performer. Don't worry too much about what I'm doing right now. I'm just debugging something. Songs isn't found. I'm just going to run all of this code. One sec. Control A.
This is a good time to mention that obviously we all make little errors in code. Me and Alex do, and that's why we do these live coding sessions, so you can watch us struggle too as we make mistakes. And again, to emphasize what Alex has just said, we're going to be learning joining in a future week, so don't worry about it yet if you don't understand what's gone on.
I was trying to shield you from this by doing it in advance, and I just made a mistake. And we've now got an O, hang on. And there's still an error. There we go. Cool. So now let's load the data frame and pretend none of that ever happened. So if we look at our data frame song, we've got loads of stuff in the environment as well. So I'm just going to clean that up because that was all the stuff from what I just did. So let's get chart data back in and let's get our song data back in. So our song data now has 1 row per song.
Can I just jump in again, Alex? Because what you did there, I think, is really useful. Is that this global environment tab at the top right? You'll notice that when me and Alex work on code, we often press the clean environment thing. And that's because sometimes when you're working and you're doing lots of things, you end up having more objects in your environment than you actually have then created in your actual code. And so to make sure your code runs without errors later on, you probably want to kind of wipe it occasionally and then start again and make sure that everything that you want to create is actually in the code. So you'll see us wiping the environment quite often. And that's just good practice to make sure that we're not creating objects that we don't end up using, or that we think we've created an object in our code, but we actually haven't because we've done it and maybe we deleted it or something like that.
Yeah. So you'll notice here, it's actually ordered it for us. I don't know at what point in the code that I cleaned up, but these songs are now in order. So it's starting with some special characters, and then there's Baby One More Time because that starts with 3 dots, and then things like anything that begin with brackets, like the mashed potatoes part 1, and all sorts of exciting songs. So the other things in these data, that the reason I joined the thing is we've got some summary things that I made from the original data set, like position, times on chart, weeks on chart, and so on. So I just generated those from the original full data set. I also added these things from Spotify, which are information about its duration and stuff like that, whether or not it's marked as explicit, and then also some music theory type things about it. It's like which code for which key it's in, how loud it is in decibels, but also its danceability and its energy. So one thing that's quite fun I'm going to find out is the least danceable song. So let's do that. So we want to take our song data, and what we want to do is filter to danceability equals min danceability. We want the ones that have the least. And that hasn't worked. Why hasn't that worked? I don't know why that hasn't worked. Let's try a different approach. So let's just try sorting by danceability. So let's try arrange danceability. And we're not going to be able to see anything. So we want to select certain variables. So arrange sorts the thing by a particular variable, and select just selects certain columns. So we'll just take the song, the performer, and the danceability score. And there we go. We find that the least danceable song with a danceability of 0 is A Letter to an Angel. Although I'm a bit curious, I suspect this, I went and listened to A Letter to an Angel, and it's like not undanceable. So I think that there might be a data error. I think things that are coming out as 0 shouldn't be. An American Trilogy would then be the least danceable song. So if you want to, I haven't actually listened to that. If you want to go away and listen to An American Trilogy by Elvis Presley and tell us whether or not it's danceable, that would be great. And just to try it the other way, let's find the most danceable. How do you do it? Good question. How do you make it go the other way? So, average danceability by, I didn't think of that. Let's do that in a minute. So I'm going to arrange by danceability in the opposite order, and it turns out the most danceable song is Funky Cold Medina by Tone Loc. But we also have Ice Ice Baby by both the Glee cast and Vanilla Ice. Bad appears twice. There's some sort of data problem here. So Funky Cold Medina is the most danceable song officially. What's the arrange function do? The arrange function sorts the data by a particular column. So that's a really good question. What does the arrange function do? So I'm just going to check. I don't think I put a year in here. I did in one version of the data, but not in this version, I don't think. I don't think there's a year specified. No, so let's extract the year from the date. It's going to be the first thing to do. So we're going to, again, do a couple of things that you've not seen before. This might happen for a couple of the first weeks, just because you're sort of still building up the basic skills. But let's do our average danceability a year. I'm manually typing cogents just because that's my habit, but you don't have to do it. So we want to start with our song data, and the first thing we want is a year column. So to create new columns, use a function called mutate. And what that does is it takes an existing column and creates a new column with some function of the original one. For what we need, I'm going to use this package called lubridate, which gives us some handy functions for modifying dates. So what we're going to want is year equals year of, let's call it song year, just so we're not getting the function and the variable confused. Song year equals year of chart, what's it called? I called it first appearance. So let's say chart year of first appearance. So this is going to be the year that it first appeared on the chart. Yeah, I'm definitely going to make what I've written today public. Don't worry. Danceability, if you want to know what danceability means, that was in the, if you go back to this file, so see this again, and you click on the project, there's a data dictionary. So when you're working with your own data, it's probably a good idea to put one of these in. And it tells us that danceability describes how suitable a track is for dancing. It's a combination of musical elements, including tempo, rhythm, stability, beat strength, and overall regularity. So there'll be some algorithm. They have helpfully not told us what. I'm sure you could research that and find out what it was. So we're going to do this, and this is going to produce a huge data frame, but just to check it's worked, I'm going to select the first appearance column and the song year column for now. So just take those first two columns, and yeah, that's worked. 1962 becomes 1962, 2017 becomes 2017. That's working. So okay, we don't want to do that now. Why is year a function? Year is a function because loads of weird songs are on the Hot 100. Right, so year is a function because it is a it's from the lubridate package, and what it does is it takes a date and turns it into a year. So that's why it's a function. Mutate is a function that takes an existing variable, so in this case first appearance, and converts it to a new variable, so in this case song year, using this function year. So this might be something like, you know, it could be multiplying two columns together, let's say, or there's various things you can do with that. I'm not going to, I didn't explain how I merged two data frames, and I'm not going to explain that because we haven't done it yet. It's a bit more complicated. If you want to see the code that I did for that, it's in this cleanup.r file, which is included in the repository.
We will be getting on joining and other sort of stuff later in the course, because there's a few bits that we do need to teach you around it. So don't worry about it yet. We'll typically set it up for you.
As I say, I was trying to hide that from you and it failed. So we've got the years now. We wanted the average danceability. So we are going to want to summarize this data now, because we want to create some sort of summary, which is the danceability by year. Oh no, I've missed a step. So we want to summarize the data, but if I just run summarize, let's say average dance equals mean of danceability, you can try that, and that's not working because some songs don't have a known danceability. It just wasn't recorded for some songs, so we need to use this function is.na na.rm option. So a lot of functions have an na.rm option, and what that does is it removes the NAs from the data. So NA means no data, and by default, if there is no data, the mean will just return no data because it can't work out what the mean would have been if you included the data missing. But we don't. We're just going to ignore those. So NARM equals true. That's still not what we want. That's just the average danceability of all songs, and it's 0.6. And that's not what we want. And the reason that's not worked is that we haven't told it that we want danceability by year. So let's do group by song year. So this group by doesn't do anything visibly. So if I get rid of the pipe here and just run the group by and stop there, so there's no pipe here, we're not running the summarize. This looks the same. It looks exactly the same, except it now says group song year. So that doesn't actually do anything. It's when we put the pipe in, it now summarize knows what to do with that. And it finds a danceability by year. So yes, in mutate, the new variable is the first argument. Does that mean that charting songs are more danceable than average? Maybe. It depends how they calculated the danceability. I don't know how they did that, but quite possibly. I don't know how it's calibrated. You probably need to look at the algorithm.
Well, I think this is a good time to shout out to the students. Students, give in the chat, how do we find the most danceable year now? We have shown you. You see. So how are we going to find it out? Whap in chat how you think we're going to find it out. What do you think the next thing in this pipe is?
The pipe in. Yes. Very good.
Well
arranged
done.
by what? Arranged by what? What do we want to put the arrange here? So max will get the maximum of that year, but we want to know which year was the maximum. Yes, we're going to need a desk, but desk of what? So desk is because we want them to be in one of the most danceable by average dance. Excellent. We put it together. So do that. There we go. And we see that the most danceable year was 2018. So that hypothesis of maybe they're getting more danceable, well, that was my theory, might be looking good. So let's now actually just plot. So we'll get rid of the arrange and instead plot the data. So we'll do a ggplot and we want AS, and X is going to be song year and Y is going to be average dance. So that's not going to do anything. Well, again, let's just see what that does. Nothing, because we haven't given it a chart type yet. And what we're going to want is a John line. We're going to want a line graph probably here. That's interesting. So it does rather look like the danceability, except apparently in 2010, we stopped wanting to dance the songs. We kind of, the 2000s, things got less danceable on average, and then they got more danceable again. And then they're dropping again now, it seems, but you know, it's hard to extrapolate from things. So we might not actually know that they're dropping now, it might just be noise. But there's a general increasing trend there, I think. What's the difference between mutate and summarize? Good question. So mutate creates a new column with sort of the same number of entries. So you can make a trend line, that's right. So mutate makes a new column with the same number of entries as the original column. So it would be used for sort of converting one variable into another variable. Summarize will usually use it after a group by, but not always. And it's creating some summary statistics that combine different rows into one variable. Someone asked, can we find out what songs were in 2010, see what went wrong? We can. There are an awful lot of songs in 2010. Let's find the least danceable song of 2010. So song data, let's use a new code chunk for this. 2010. So we're going to want song data, and we're going to want to filter year. The song year though is just here. We've created a new variable called song year in this pipeline. We never saved it anywhere, so let's create that as a new. Does that make sense? So we've started this, we've created this new variable, we've got it here, we never saved it again under the name song data. So let's just split this pipeline up a bit. We'll first do that bit where we create the new variable song year, and then we'll take our modified data frame and pass that to make the chart. And that means we can use the variable. So when we run that, and we can run the next one again if we want. What that now means is we can use the filter, we can access that song year variable. So we want song year to be equal to 2010. There we go. So that's getting some songs. And we want to, again, it's going to be this arrange by danceability, and we actually just want the ordinary version, right? Because we want the least danceable song. And let's tell it, just so we can actually read this, we want the song and the performer and the danceability score. So apparently the least danceable, so I misspelled performer. The least danceable song of 2010 was New Morning by Alpha Rev. Oh, the Glee cast are appearing lots of times. Oh, wow. Okay. So maybe Glee was what happened. You're not able to open them. Before you can open the data frames, so song data, chart data, you need to actually load the data. So run chart data, read IDS, and so on. So run those lines of code, and then they should appear. Yes, everything is Glee's fault, someone says in the chat. That isn't my official statement. I can say that according to the Billboard charts, the least danceable songs of 2010 were by the Glee cast. Wow, that's quite remarkable. That there's so much Glee in there. There's Katie Lang pops up with Hallelujah, which is not a very danceable song, and also Black Rain by Soundgarden, New Morning by Alpha Rev. But wow, that's very Glee.
People hating on Glee in 2010. Clearly, they were done with it. Yeah, you're done with Glee.
So we are running out of time, and we've done a couple of plots. One thing I'm going to put on I Dream to Dream was many people. It's originally from Les Miserables, but Susan Boyle did record a version of I Dream to Dream. Apparently, her version was either not in 2010 or was more danceable than the Glee casts. Could you explain how I say the song is so very well? Yes, I can. So I'll make this the last question because we're running out of time, and I want to just say what I've done. What I'm going to share with you, because I'm going to add some stuff that I prepared for this that I haven't got to use that was quite interesting. So the song data, we did this new tape to create a song year. And what we had before, it was just pushing this into this pipeline here. It was just carrying on. And the thing is, that's great. It created the plot. Then we never done any assignment. Remember, this is the assignment operator, this little arrow. And so what I did, it created the variable for now and pushed it into the plot and made the plot and then forgot about it. So what I've done, I've split the pipeline into two. First said, okay, take song data, create this new variable, and then overwrite song data with, so we're saving it again under the same name. At the beginning of this pipeline, we're saying, okay, take the output of this pipe and put it back under the name song data. That then saves that as this new variable, and then we can keep using that every time we call song data. So when we used it here, when we used it here, we called it. I think that's about all we have time for. The thing I'm going to show you on the like printed version of this is that in when we get to the if you do a plot of how long songs spent on the charts over time, that's a really interesting plot, because what it shows is that there's a weird thing where as you get to the 90s, suddenly lots of songs start spending exactly 20 weeks on the chart. Exactly. And that's bizarre. And I did a little bit of stuff where I sort of discovered that, and now I can explain why that happened. That's a little cool thing, so I'll put that in as well. So yeah, I think that's all we have time for. I'm definitely going to share this. Don't worry if you didn't get a chance to code along. The R Markdown file is going to be available. So basically, once I'm done cleaning this up, it will appear in the same place of it will appear in the place, the exact same URL we had before. So instead of the blank version, if you go there, you will find you'll find the full version. But you can then go on and play with that a bit more if you like. And if you search for Tidy Tuesday Billboard on the internet, you can find things that other people have done with these data as well. So yeah.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you've had fun.
Thank you very much for coming. Yeah.
If you want to, play around with this data, we'll post Well, we've already posted on the GitHub the link to this, Alex. As you say, you're going to kind of finish something off and then do another push.
I'll probably do one push now, just for like the snapshot of what's happened in the live code along, and then I will clean it up later. So
cool. So yeah, make sure you pull. If you've already made one, you can just press pull and any of those changes will come in. Remember, if you've made changes yourself, that pull will probably make some conflicts, some merge conflicts. But go back to what we showed you at the start of this week in order to learn how to resolve them. And yeah, I think that's about it. Just give it a practice, give it a go. We'll post the video of this later, and yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed it. Hopefully you found out a little bit about music as well. I'm going to stop the recording. If anyone wants to stick around and ask any questions, I know at least one of you I've asked to stick around at the end so I can help. Please do.